Namaskar, everyone. Good morning to all our viewers in the United States and good evening to everybody in India. We welcome you to this webinar with the American Academy of Yoga and Meditation, which is being broadcasted in our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. For our new viewers who are joining us for the first time, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the American Academy of Yoga and Meditation before we start our webinar today. The American Academy of Yoga and Meditation is a non-profit organization of physicians, researchers, medical professionals, and practitioners of yoga and meditation. It is registered in Memphis, Tennessee. The organization is dedicated to education and research in the field of yoga and meditation by fostering an interdisciplinary approach of linking science, arts, ethics, and spiritualism to improve ways of human life and bring about a policy change in the field of public health and integrative medical practices. We seek to approach welfare through wellness. We also have a social platform that is the Ganges Mississippi Dialogue, through which we deal with three issues: education, healthcare, and economic challenges. We are a group of the best people in their respective fields, including policymakers, doctors, academicians, who come together to put their expertise in bringing out solutions to the prevalent challenges being faced by our nation. So, the American Academy of Yoga and Meditation, in collaboration with Ramkumar Rathi, Patanjali Yoga Chair, Savitribai Phule Pune University, presents a live webinar titled Science of Yoga on the occasion of the National Science Day celebrated in India on February 28th. Yoga, as we all know, is an ancient but perfect science that deals with the evolution of humanity. This evolution includes all aspects of one's being, from bodily health to self realization. Modern day science confirms that the practice of yoga has tangible physical benefits that our speakers are going to enlighten us on today. So, our first speaker for today is Atma Yoga Guru, Dr. Samprasad Vinod, founder of Maharshi Vinod Foundation in Pune University. To introduce him, he has over 45 years of research experience in training, treatment, and research in yoga. He has great spiritual heritage from his father, Maharshi Vinod, who is a true spiritual master who traveled world over as the World Peace Ambassador, and his mother, Matri Vinod, who was a great Sanskrit scholar and an educationist. He blends Indian spiritual wisdom with modern scientific knowledge through various activities related to yoga. He is a yoga guru and spiritual master of international repute. He is a highly respected guide on holistic health, well-being, and inner transformation. He has toured extensively across India, Europe, and USA for addressing research conferences, holding seminars, providing spiritual guidance, and training in yoga. Our second speaker for today is Dr. Indranil Basure. Dr. Basure is a cardiologist and a cardiac electrophysiologist at the Memphis VA Hospital and an adjunct professor at the University of Memphis, Tennessee. He is also a visiting professor of cardiology and head of integrative cardiology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Rishikesh, India. The moderator for today's webinar is Dr. Girish Tillu. He is the Assistant Professor of the Health Sciences Department of Savitribai Phule Pune University and the Principal Investigator of the Ayush Center of Excellence. He has 16 years of research experience in interdisciplinary environment. He is a Vaidya scientist, Ayurveda researcher with the experience of clinical and transdisciplinary research. He is engaged in researching Ayurveda and yoga for cancer, COVID-19, and metabolic diseases. I now welcome Dr. Tillu to please conduct this webinar.
Thank you, Andrila, for these introductions and initiating the session. This is a collaborating endeavor between American Academy of Yoga and Meditation and Ramakumar Rathi Patanjali Yoga Chair that is established in Savitribai Phule Pune University Both the institutions have similar objectives of scientific propagation, study, education of yoga. We are organizing this session on the occasion of National Science Day of India, and today we have speakers. Those represent modern sciences as well as yoga. I request our first speaker, Dr. Indranil Basu Ray, to share his views about yoga as science that deals with health, healing, and happiness, especially on the background of ongoing pandemic. This is very important to ponder over on fundamentals of yoga and its application in today's scenario. Dr. Basu Ray brings very unique expertise from cardiology. He has been trained in India as well as in Harvard Medical School and now connects both the thought process, modern medicine, as well as yoga research. I request Dr. Basu Ray to share his thoughts about how yoga is beneficial, and he will also share scientific aspects and our understanding modern insights into traditional science of yoga. Over to you, Dr. Basu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. I'm indeed privileged to be in this highly educated gathering. So, one of the things that is very important to understand that modern medicine has developed tremendously in the last 2 to 3 decades. In the last 400 years, from the time that church prevented opening up of body, doing post-mortem, for a long period, medicine was dormant. But from 17th century onward, medicine has developed a lot. Despite severe development in medicine, we now still know that in the last few years, we have gone from human body to a particular organ. For example, if you have a disease of the heart, we call a cardiologist. From the heart, we went to one particular cell, myocardium, and then we go to the genes. So modern medicine has been going from a huge, like a huge cone to smaller and smaller, from the body to a part of the body, to a part of the body to the organ of the body, to the organ of the body to the genes. Now, this approach that has been there in medicine for the last almost 500 years has clearly failed. As we know, today 70% of death in this planet is because of what is known as non-communicable disease. Or else, what is non-communicable disease? These are diseases like heart attack, cancer, stroke. So heart attack, stroke, that itself kills the maximum number of people, almost twice the number of people who die from cancer. So all these diseases are responsible for 70 to 75% of death in the world, including both developed and developing countries. So where did we lose it? Why is it now that we know even the genetical reasons for a disease, still how come we cannot control this? The reason is very simple. 10,000 years back, or maybe 5,000 years back, historians are not very sure, when yoga originated, the people who originated the yoga are basically sages or sannyasis in India. And so their outlook, they were also scientists, but they were a different type of scientist. I read a famous book by Fritjof Capra called The Tao of Science, and he gives a very good understanding of the difference between the sages of India as a scientist and the modern scientist. So if you have a big banyan tree in front of you, if you are today's scientist, you will go to the root, and from the root you'll go up, you'll go to the trunk, and from the trunk you'll go to the branches, and from the branches you'll try to see each leaf. That is the approach of modern science. Sages in the India's past, like Vyasa, Maharishi Patanjali, or even Gautama Buddha, they were also scientists, but they are scientists of consciousness. So they looked at the whole banyan tree and told you what is the relation of the banyan tree with the universe. So both are two different outlooks. So you might think, what am I talking about? Is that a real way? Absolutely. That's why somebody called Werner Heisenberger, as you guys know, who's one of the father of modern quantum physics. He said that what we are inventing today are not invention; they are discoveries, for they have been invented by Hindu rishis long back. So when you can calm and cool your mind and go into deep consciousness, your own consciousness, you get aligned with the universal consciousness. Then the whole mechanism of how this universe works, who are we, why we came on this earth, why do we have disease, why do I have to die, all this becomes clearer because you're part and parcel of this universe. So to understand this, you have to have your consciousness aligned with the consciousness of this creation, and you can do it. Why? Because unlike a lot of other religion which talks about a father or God and his son, and then we are common people who have to follow the son to go reach the father, Hindu philosophy doesn't believe in that. Hindu philosophy believes, Advaita Vedanta believes, the whole universe is one, and you're part and parcel of that creator as well as creation. So you have the right to know everything. But then why don't I know it if I have the right to know everything? The reason why I don't know it, because my brain is filled with other thoughts. My brain is filled with thought, how can I be a professor? How can I get two cars? How can I make a bigger house? How can I leave $1 million in my bank? So I have no time to think of consciousness or God or whatever you call it. I have no time for spirituality. Now, what is the problem in thinking of these things? There's no problem at all. You can be the richest man in the world. But the problem is, if you do not use yoga, you can dream of being the richest man in the world, but you'll never be. Whereas people who practice spirituality and yoga, they can dream whatever. If they dream material things like having the biggest house in the world, having the biggest property in the world, they can also achieve that. And if they want to achieve something higher than materialism, like spirituality or union with the eternal consciousness, they can also achieve that. Why? The answer is very clear. I want to hear a nice song sung by one of the top singers in India. So then I have to go to Akashvani and try to fine tune my radio to catch that voice. Similar, I want to hear jazz, so I have to tune into the Voice of America New Orleans station and get jazz. So what does that mean? You have to fine tune your instrument to catch that vibration. Human beings, unfortunately, live in a vibration which is filled with all these different materialistic things. So we cannot reach higher vibration. So to reach higher vibration, we have to fine tune our brain. And that fine tuning of the brain automatically fine tunes our body to make it disease free, automatically fine tunes our brain so that we are never depressed, we are never anxious, we are never angry. And this fine tuning has a name, and the name of that is yoga. Thanks to last 5 or 6 decades of research, now we know even at the molecular level, at the genetic level, what happens. I'll give you a very simple understanding before I hand it over to Dr. Tillu for other questions, or Dr. Vinod. How we as human beings lived on this earth for many million years. Some people say 2 million, some people say 4 million, doesn't matter. But we did not always live in a house in a nice surroundings like this. For thousands of years, our predecessors lived in caves. So when they got up early in the morning, they did not get to see their wife or their children or their father or their mother. They could be seeing a saber-toothed tiger standing in front of their cave, trying to enter the cave, or a large anaconda trying to slide into their cave. So our predecessors had to fight the saber-toothed tiger, the mammoth, or the anaconda to either live, or they got eaten by these animals. Thankfully, you and I are still on this earth because our predecessors were successful in either running off or killing these animals. That's made us successful. So remember, our body in this 4 million years is geared to this sort of emergency, because body sees everything as a threat to its existence, so it has to fight it. This in scientific term is called as flight or fight response. So if I'm not facing a saber-toothed tiger, I'm not facing a mammoth, I'm not facing a huge 27 feet anaconda, but just because of the fact that a friend of mine has got promotion and I don't have a promotion, so I am jealous. That itself releases all this hormone that should have been released if I was faced with the anaconda. So imagine the gross overaction that the body does. Every time you're angry, every time you're jealous, every time you're just unhappy, every time you're anxious, you're causing a plethora of changes in your body as if you're getting eaten up by an anaconda or being chased by a dinosaur. So this is funny, but this is true. And this has been proved medically. So all these dangerous hormones that get released, they cause massive devastation. They destroy your heart, causing heart failure. They cause you to have multiple heart attacks. They block the blood vessels to your brain to cause stroke. They block arteries that goes to your legs, so you have paralysis, you have peripheral artery disease. And there is, though there is some controversy whether stress itself can cause cancer, still 40-50% of the oncologists believe it can. But where there is no controversy at all is if you already have cancer, stress can actually increase cancer and increase the spread of cancer. So, how do we control the stress? Yoga has got the mechanism, and that's what we know today. Starting from over 300 genes are activated when you have stress. Noradrenaline is released, which causes anxiousness, makes your heart go fast, makes your heart expand, causing heart failure. Your brain is changed to a brain which is instead of being active, instead of being calm, cool, more effective, it becomes ineffective, and it gives rise to anxiety because different chemicals are released in the brain that increases your anxiety. But a 4 weeks practice of yoga, just 4 weeks, if you practice yoga, which includes few asanas and meditation, and that is very important. Asanas is just a part of yoga, maybe 5 or 10% of yoga, but 90% of yoga is meditation. If you practice meditation and a few asanas, your brain changes, and that's what we call neuroplasticity. 4 weeks of practice will make you less anxious, take away your depression, get you less angry, and this goes on improving with time. And also, don't forget, as we grow older, our brain gets smaller and smaller because every day after 25 years of age, at least 300 brain cells die. That is the normal process of aging. But there's been scientific research, which in 2010, which for the first time showed that 5 years of meditation can make your brain grow by 1 inch. And after that, there's been over 50, 60 different papers using functional MRI and PET scan that show that your brain can actually grow. And that's why you have people like Buddha or Swami Vivekananda with exceptional memory because they can make their brain grow till death. Not it does not stop growing when they reach 25, like people like you and me. Second of all, not only does the brain grow, its character changes. You become a character where you're less anxious. So what I call the Buddha's brain, you start developing what is known as the Buddha's brain. From a normal brain, which we call Broca's brain, it develops into what is known as Buddha's brain, which is always tranquil, always in control. Now, body and mind is connected every second, which we did not know before. Now we know with research in the last 2 to 3 decades. And so, along with the mind, there are changes in the body. There are people who are 90 years of old, 90 years of age, but they look as if they're only 50 years of age. So this was initially not accepted by science. Now it is accepted, and they have given a term for this. So if you are born 90 years back, your age is 90. So your chronological age is 90. But if I see the mechanics of your body, for example, if you do meditation for 12 years, your aging decreases by 5 years. So you may be chronologically 90 years of age because you're born 90 years back, but biologically, your body machine may be as effective as a 50-year-old man. And that is called biological aging. Medicine, for the first time, accepted that yoga can not only decrease aging, you can get a more efficient body at a much higher age. And that's what we see in India all the time. In the Himalayas, you have 90 years old man climbing up mountain faster than what I can do at half that age. So this is because of yoga. So physical changes come automatically. You don't get disease. Cancers can be prevented. If you already have heart disease and cancers, they can be prevented. So this is the mechanism by which it works. And as we go discussing, we might discuss a little more what are the exact mechanism. Over to you, Dr. Tillu.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for this very nice overview of yoga philosophy and scientific insights which we are gaining day by day. There is a question, is there a particular age to live yogi life, or in other words, to practice yoga, or uh,
That's a good question. So no, number one is no, and there's no either age or even time. In America, I quite often find my patients and coming, Dr. Basure, I go to do yoga from 4 to 5 p.m. So you have to understand this very clearly. Yoga is not like Pilates, it's not like running in a treadmill. You cannot do it from 4 to 5 p.m. Yoga is done 24/7, 365, because your stress is not only when you are doing treadmill, your stress is not only from 4 to 5 p.m., your stress is 24 hours. And a study less than 5 years back from a university in the US, from Mississippi, actually showed that even normal things, like suppose somebody wants to be the head of department, which is very normal, a career goal, even a normal career goal can actually increase stress and activate these genes inside the body called the CTRA genes, which damage the body. So yoga is for all the time, all the ages. So you start doing yoga at whatever age you can. Younger, I started meditation when I was 6 years age. There are people who did it much younger than me. So there is absolutely no age to start yoga. Yoga is life, actually. You live through yoga. Yoga is not something you do. You are yoga, actually. That is the better way of explaining.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Basure. And there will be more questions, and we will take many more questions at the end after Dr. Samprasad Vinodji's talk. I I just want to share a quote by C.V. Ramanji. He said, in the history of science, we often find that the study of some natural phenomenon has been the starting point in the development of every new branch of science. And as we observe nature and ask questions, why the full fruit falls down, or how the light gets diffracted, there are so many questions inside our mind and about working of our mind, and Patanjali calls it a chitta. And there is also a science in itself about going inside. Our next speaker, Dr. Samprasad Vinodji, he will talk about yoga as science in itself. I request participants and audience to share their questions on Facebook and WhatsApp, or on YouTube. We will have question answer sessions after Dr. Samprasad Vinodji's talk. Over to you, Vinodji. Sir, can you please unmute yourself?
Namaste, everybody. Basuji really talked so well and gave an overview of what modern science is and modern medicine is in particular, and how it relates well with yoga and meditation. When I think about yoga as a science in itself, I think that all modern scientific explorations or endeavors are basically designed to explore the outer world and to find out some phenomenon, underlying phenomenon, which could be useful to humanity. And that invention or discovery of truth can be converted into some gadgets, some objects, which can make our life comfortable and less stressed. And so they have to, first of all, uh, think about having a hypothesis, that this is the hypothesis I would like to check through research procedure. Then they have a research design properly formed, and they follow that design. They have the objectives to be uh, in their mind to be explored. Then they have a procedure to be followed. Then they have observations to be made, and all the observations that are made during a research procedure, a research project, all those findings are put through statistical tests to confirm that the findings are not by chance, but they are actual findings. Another important thing that I have noticed about empirical science is that it is more result oriented. All the money that is put into modern research is intended for coming out with some product, some finding that will be turned into some business. Like pharmaceutical companies put in a lot of money to come up with some drugs. And when they put in a lot of money, naturally their whole intention is to look for a return on investment. So when some product is developed, it is marketed well, then the need is created before the drug comes. Actually, the need is created worldwide so that there'll be a market ready when the drug appears in the market. Then there'll be people who will buy that drug and make use of it. So whenever there is a investment of money involved, naturally return on investment is what they look for, which is understandable. But when you think of ancient wisdom of India, all the rishis and sages and seers, like for instance Patanjali, Bhagwan Patanjali, uh, what he realized, he has put in the form of Patanjali Yoga Darshan. And the term used is darshana. It means he has seen something. He saw the truth, and in a state of deep meditation or higher state of consciousness, where truth appeared before him, in a state of ego-free, no thought awareness state, the underlying reality of life just appeared before him. And when he formulated, or when he turned it into a text, it is called as Patanjali Yoga Darshan. And if you have a look at Patanjali Yoga Darshan, its format also is similar to any research thesis that you see in connection with modern research. So it starts with Atha Yoga Anushasanam, then Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, Tadha Drashtu Swarupaiva Sthanam. So then it goes on speaking about what are the vrittis and how they are created, and he follows the similar principles, I would say, which are followed by the modern scientists. As rightly mentioned by Basuji, Bhagavan Patanjali or Gautama or Buddha or Shankaracharya, they are all scientists of the inner world, primarily inner world. They did not ignore the outer world, but they always sought solutions of related to problems of life in their inner world. So, and all the solutions were experiential solutions and standalone kind of truths they could discover in their inner world. And then they uh, sort of came out with Upadesha to uplift the living standard of people, but in a very different way. They were interested more in self-knowledge, self-realization, and all peace of mind and happiness and sense of well-being were considered as just byproducts. Not, they were not seeking peace of mind. They were not seeking happiness, because when you seek something, what you get is according to what you have sought. It may not be the ultimate truth, because the ultimate truth cannot be hypothesized. So that's another difference between search within and research outside. Search within involves just taking away all that appears to you as truth to be just ignored or kept aside, and just follow the search in an incessant way so that you reach solution at experiential level, and you're completely convinced about that solution, and you have no hesitation in saying that yes, I have understood the truth, the ultimate truth. But they would speak out of complete freedom from thought and complete freedom from ego. When you are sure of something experientially, and when you say that yes, I know the truth, the way you say is, the intonation is very important. If you are doing it out of uh, arrogance, out of egoism, then that approach is not right, because ego is such a small uh, entity to understand the world around us or the world within us. So, ego is the real hurdle, if we say so. And if that is properly understood and its ramifications within our mind and our being, if they are properly discovered, all those roots are uprooted, then you begin to see something which is far beyond your individual understanding and individual perception. Because whenever you perceive something from the outer world, it is first received at chitta level, at just perception of whatever you have seen or felt or smelt or heard. It just enters into yourself, your being, and then it is received at chitta level as a reflection of that reality, and then it is turned into thought for individual use, the individual reference, and uh, for functioning. Like when I see this object, mouse, uh, the size of the mouse and uh, whatever that exists as mouse, it enters through my eyes at chitta level, at just perception of this object. And then I turn that perception into thought and say that yes, this is mouse. So the most important contribution, as I understand, of Bhagavan Patanjali is he understood what lies before thought, because perception of reality at chitta level is just perception. And when you individualize that perception, it becomes thought. But my perception of reality is again my perception, so it is limited by my ego. But the reality is not bound by my perception, so it is universal. So all the practices, all the various sutras that Bhagavan Patanjali mentions in his fourth chapter treatise on yoga, Samadhipad, Sadhanapad, Vibhuti, and Kaivalya. So he just taking us by hand to go through the experience of effortless ease. Because Kaivalya, if we demystify that word, it means that you're pure being, or you're being comfortable with yourself and with everything around you. So effortless ease or sahajata is what Kaivalya is. And if you are able to, if you have to experience that or realize that, then you have to take away all that comes in the way of realization of the truth. And that realization of truth, not at individual level, but at perception level. So so Patanjali talks about yoga chitta vritti nirodha. He's not talking about mana vichara nirodha. He's talking about chitta vritti nirodha. So vritti is different than vichara or thought. But so pre-thought state, I would say that the perception of reality at first inside our being is at chitta level, which triggers some activity at chitta level, which when fully developed, it becomes vritti, and it's then you understand it as pramana, viparya, vikalpa, nidra, or smriti as vrittis, when you name them as vrittis. But before naming, they were there as ripples in consciousness at chitta level. And if you experientially understand this, and if you realize that even before thought, there is something that I have to understand, and if I'm able to silence those vrittis, then thoughts will automatically disappear and my mind will be completely free of thoughts. And if I'm completely free of thoughts, not thoughtless, but thought free, then my real self or my Atman or Purusha becomes perceptible to me because you cannot reach your true self or your Atman or Purusha with the help of thoughts, but you can only experience its presence when your mind is completely free of thoughts. And freedom from thoughts, there are simple tools that Bhagavan Patanjali offers us, that being aware of your body uh, and and in asana, regarding asana, he says that sthira sukham asanam and prayatna shaitilya ananta samapattityam. So stability of body, we use those terms and understand their verbal meaning and assume that we have understood what stability is. Same way, sthira sukhamasana, sukhadata, or comfort. By just understanding the word comfort verbally, we assume that we have understood what real comfort is. But in reality, if we had to dwell deep or delve deep into those concepts and try to figure out what actually Bhagavan Patanjali means by stability, what he actually means by comfort, what he actually means by prayatna shaitilya or uh, effortless ease, shall we say. Kaivalya and effortless ease or prayatna shaitilya are kind of interchangeable because when your efforts, your tendency to put in efforts has come to a standstill, is suspended for a while, then you are completely released of the individuality that keeps you in the boundaries of um, your ego related and ego created world. But when you are free of thoughts, along with the thought that you are a particular human being, because I am such and such person is also a thought, and all the thoughts that are just offshoots of this basic thought that I am such and such person. And when you reach nirvicharta or complete freedom from thoughts by being aware of thoughts and not reacting to those thoughts and making use of breath as a tool to reduce the number of thoughts in such a manner that being aware of thoughts and not reacting to them becomes easy. And if you're not reacting to your thoughts, either positively or negative way, you just let thoughts come in, let them stay and let them go. And you are not in favor of any thought or you are not against any thought. Then those thoughts cannot establish roots in your consciousness and therefore they just come, stay and go. And after a while, you begin to realize that your mind is still, in the beginning, you realize that the mind is still filled with thoughts, but I'm not affected by those thoughts as I used to in the past. Because I get affected by thoughts when I react to them. And if I stop reacting, then it is easy for me to be free of thoughts. And for that to happen, I have to be aware of my breath and become aware without control and concentration, just being aware of how the breathing movement is taking place. And if I'm aware without control and concentration, I'm kind of preparing myself for the next stage in which I'm just being aware of my thoughts without reaction. And when I stop reacting, the thoughts will completely come to an end. Then I'll experience something which is beyond thoughts and beyond the basic thought that I am such and such person. And if that thought also disappears, then what I experience is completely different than my usual field of experiencing in the usual world around me. Because that is governed by my limited self, which is under control of my limited ego. But when I make friends with my ego, make friends with my mind, make friends with my body, emotions, and just be with them, understand them well, and be free of their clutches, and be gradually get attuned with my real self, which is nothing but my Purusha or my Atman. And if I get develop an access with my real self through no thought state, then I begin to have good time. I develop that sense of well-being that brings harmony and happiness within me. Just because I'm able to connect well with my true self, and if I'm able to do that, uh, health, well-being, and harmony will just come to me as prasad or byproduct. So the difference, what I'm getting at, is modern medicine or modern science primarily focuses on results that can be turned into some business. But Bhagavan Patanjali is talking about something different, and he is not offering these sutras for making money or making business out of it. And the whole orientation, Indian orientation towards looking at life, is so vastly different. We have considered that moksha, freedom or liberation from the bondage, as the ultimate purushartha, as the ultimate achievement in life. Greatest achievement in life is liberation from this life. It's very interesting. So, if you go through the Indian lifestyle management systems that were developed, like you start with brahmacharya, then you enter into grihasthashram, then you do vanaprastha, and then sannyasa. So, first is like you lay foundation of understanding the deeper realities of life, and you see those reality, how those realities and those truths have to be lived by being with your guru in Gurukula system of education. So all the wards, all the students had the opportunity to observe how those concepts that govern this universe are to be understood and lived. And on the basis of that, from proper understanding of those principles of life, you enter into your worldly life. So it will have a different complexion altogether. So, and when you go through the life, your worldly life, you are not advised to give away everything right away, but you just earn your living, live a good life, then let your desires get fulfilled. Certain desires will not get fulfilled, but you get an opportunity to be exposed to how desire arises, how it develops, and how one goes after that, and how one fulfills one's desire. And after going through the experience, live experience of worldly life, you begin to realize the limitations of desires. And then in the third phase of life, you just take a bird's eye view of your life, and then come to realize the limitations of worldly life through your own experience. You are not denied worldly living. You have entered with full preparation. Then you have understood. You have lived with your desires. You have fulfilled certain desires. Then you have also achieved something, and at the end of this worldly life, or uh, when you are kind of retiring or preparing to retire, at that time you take a close view of what happened in your life, learn from that, then you dwell, reflect, and think over it more deeply, see how those desires made you miserable or made you suffer or made you unhappy. Uh, and if this realization, they have given specific time for or phase of life for such realization after having gone through the actual experience of worldly living, not jumping directly to sannyas ashram or giving up everything. Why I'm talking about this is that uh, the fact of life remains that whatever is born is going to die one day or the other, destroy, get destructed. So we have to prepare for the exit from this world, and that's such a fundamental and very profound and very, I would say, very scientific also approach to life. Your life is based on understanding of basic realities, underlying realities, not the visible, but what underlies that. Deploy that understanding into good living, worldly living. Then again review what has happened, learn from that, and realize that time is approaching to leave this world. So let me prepare myself well before the actual exit comes. So a particular phase of life is designed by the sages and seers for us to enter that and learn from our own mistakes, learn from our own experiences, and then enter into sannyasa or just leaving everything behind and just be happy. I mean, happily leave the body and not any bondages left or half resolved problems, half resolved crisis. Your mind is completely, your consciousness is completely free of all those bondages. And when you leave, you just live with smile on your face, on your face. I think that's the best way and very scientific and very rational way to live a complete life. So to my understanding, experiential approach to life, understand everything at individual experiential level, but do it very, very honestly. I mean, I would say that all the observation that you make inside your inner world about your mind, about your emotions, about thoughts, everything, they have to be more than 100% honest and rational. So that's very important. And if you also understand the fact that anything to be called as scientific has to be replicated. Suppose I am doing yoga and meditation in India, I am getting some effects of that. A person living in China, person living in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, United States, UK, Australia, wherever that person is living, if he follows the same tools or is doing yoga and meditation according to what Bhagavan Patanjali has described in his treatise, then he is going to get the same results. So replicability as a measure of scientific venture applies with Patanjali's Yoga Darshan also. And it has to be, of course, the observations have to be very honest. I said more than 100% honest and realistic. That's important. But if I understand my real self or my Atman, and if I get that Atma Darshana or Atma Sakshatkar, self realization, then it is a standalone state. It does not need any props from outside. I won't need any props from outside to prove that I have realized myself. So this is the difference between modern scientific endeavors or the procedures and the ancient scientific procedures. Ancient scientific procedures were completely experiential, but being completely honest and truthful, those observations and their inferences are still valid after 5,000 years. And medicines that are invented or discovered and they are put into market, they keep on changing every few years. And That's because the world, I mean, this kind of research that is done in the material world has its own innate limitations because um, uh, you make mistakes and learn from the mistakes and again improve. But having said that, we have to also see the truth at the same time that Patanjali's sutras in Patanjali Yoga Darshan have not changed over 5,000 years, and they are equally useful as they were thousands of years ago as they are today. So, with these few thoughts and reflections and my experiences, I'd like to pass it on to Dr. Tilluji to moderate the proceeding.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sharing this insightful, say, perspective of yoga. Actually, to call something science, uh, there is certain requirement. For example, cause-effect relationship, observation, evidence, reproducibility, etc. And actually, when people uh, expect something to be called as science, they require evidence. And evidence has in several forms and ways. Evidence doesn't get restricted to p values in statistics, neither in scientific or say
Mhm. Yeah.
laboratories. But yoga also considers atmanubhuti as evidence, self experience. And that atmanubhuti really comes in a better way when we have a sakshi bhav, that is not inactivity but masterly neutrality. And as you really said it, there are some questions, very interesting
Mhm.
questions.
Mhm.
I, I request you and Dr. Basu Ray to answer those questions. How we can explain meditation in scientific way? Can you please share, Dr. Basu Ray? Sir, you need to unmute, please.
Yeah, meditation, as I said, I don't think we have time to go very deep comparing the philosophical aspect to modern scientific aspect. But having said that, what Buddha found 4,000 years back sitting under a banyan tree, neurologists have not been able to improve much. Though the terms has been a little different, but basically it is the same. So let's put it like this, as Dr. Vinod was saying, we are bombarded by billions of thoughts every second. You sit down, you do savasana, your body is complete rest, but your brain is roaming all around the universe, thinking everything that has happened. So this sort of behavior is the inherent normal nature of a human brain. So the question is, how do you control this? And why would you control it in the first place? So you control this for only one reason, is what your brain is doing that results in physical destruction of the body. A fact that has not been accepted by medicine since the last 2000 years, but now is accepted for the last say 15, 20 years. Every thought has a ramification in your physical body. If you have developed today, if you have a viral infection after you lost your job, 10, 20 years back, if you went to a doctor, the doctor will tell you, are you crazy? There's no relation between you losing your job or you having a fight with your wife and you having viral infection. But now we have the technology to show that your immunological, your B cell and T cell function is depressed enough for you to get a viral infection after having a depressive or an anxiety episodes. So these are now proved. This could not be proved because we didn't have the technology. Now we have the technology. We have seen that young kids brought up in foster homes have huge part of the brain called as amygdala or hypothalamus. That is the part of the ancient brain that we share with the dinosaur, with today's crocodile or today's snake, because they live day to day, minute to minute existence fighting opposition. So those foster kids They had that because throughout their young life they were abused. They had to fight their existence. The same foster kids, you take them, put them in 4 weeks of meditation, their brain changes. You do a PET scan, you do a functional MRI, you'll find that you can hardly see their amygdala. Why? Because they're not using that organ. So the organ that you use is going to get predominance. If you want to use your brain to fight with people, if you want to use your brain to stay depressed, if you want to remain anxious, God bless you, go ahead and do it. And you will do that. But you have to also face its consequence. You will get a heart attack when you're 30, 35 years old. You will get a stroke before you die. You will have vascular disease. You might even develop cancer, though there's some controversy now whether stress can directly cause cancer, but there is enough yeah, that at least it can spread cancer if not actually cause it. So, so we have to prevent this. If you want to have a normal life, normal productive life, you have to prevent this. The only preventive way to do this is through meditation. And what you do in meditation is exactly as Dr. Vinod said. There are three. We don't have time to go into details, but as you know, whole world they're all shouting about mindfulness, mindfulness, as if it is something newly that has been discovered. Patanjali talked about mindfulness, I don't know what, 5,000 years ago. And remember, Patanjali is not the initiator of yoga. Patanjali is the Maharishi who codified and put it down. Yoga may have existed even 5,000 years or 10,000 years before Patanjali. We don't know. We don't have historical record. Yoga was started, it seems, by Shiva standing 40, 50 miles from Kedarnath. There is a lake. In that Sarovar, he is supposed to have given the first day towards the Saptarishis. And Agastya was one of the Muni who spread it in the Indian subcontinent. And we do not know the time period that lapsed between so-called Agastya Muni and so-called Maharishi Patanjali. So people think yoga started with Patanjali. That's a complete wrong conception. Maharishi just put it down. So if you look, you'll clearly find that when your mental faculties are not controlled, it is like a wild wolf in your house. You can turn that wild wolf into a nice husky dog which will protect your house, take care of your kids, prevent a thief from coming in, or you can have a wolf which, given a chance, will bite and kill you. So your mind is like a wolf sitting inside you. So it is your choice whether you want to do it. Now, scientifically, what does that mean? Scientifically, what it means is, in very simple terms, you change the chemical nature of your brain. If you want to be anxious, if you want to be stressed out, if you want to fight with everyone, just you will brain. And if I take that brain of yours out, I don't even have to physically take it out. I just get you a functional MRI, or I do a PET scan with radioactive. I'll see it'll have full of dopamine. But if you do brain scanning on, say, Dalai Lama, which was done multiple Hindu rishis in America, you'll find that their brain hardly elicits any dopamine. They're all serotonin. So they are in a state of bliss. And not only serotonin, there's one compound which Israelis discovered in 1970s. If you have nanograms of that compound in your blood, you're super happy. That's why in Hindu philosophy, the word happiness is never used. The word is used is ananda, which is bliss, which is a billion times better than happiness, because happiness comes with a clause. You get happy under particular circumstances, but bliss is without a clause. You don't get happy only when a particular thing happens. It is a state of existence. And that chemical is called anandamide, or the endorphins. So we have seen the release of endorphins inside the brain by itself. People do use bhang and all these things which are a million times less powerful, cause drug addiction, kill people, get you heart attack, and God itself has given you bhang inside your brain, and you don't want to use it. So all that we are doing is basically the inner power we are unleashing by calming the brain, cooling the brain, changing its chemistry. And unfortunately or fortunately, when you change, as Dr. Vinod said, you don't have to get the body better. Body automatically gets better. This is what I said. In whole Patanjali Yoga Sutra, if I remember correctly, correct me, Dr. Vinod, there are hardly 3 or 4 aphorisms on asanas, because asanas is considered an automatic benefit. It is not even something you try to achieve. Like in the Western world, they want to get more handsome, they want to get more beautiful, they want to have more muscular body. These are materialistic things. But in Indian philosophy, the last thing you would want to do yoga is because you want to get yourself more muscular, because there are billions of other ways to do that. So the science is you change your brain chemistry completely. And as I was talking of mindfulness, which came for the first time, it looks like, because Western people are uneducated with the actual yoga tradition. We have three things. We have dharana, then we have pratihara, then we have dhyana. So meditation comes after dharana, that is mindfulness. I am talking to you, I am aware of my breath. This is yoga. So you don't have to go to a gym. I hardly go to a gym, but I can still do yoga 24/7, 365, because yoga doesn't make you to go to a gym and run on your treadmill for 40 minutes. That can be, you can do it. I'm not saying that is wrong or you should not do it, but that is what yoga is. So that, I hope it explains. So medically, in medicine, meditation is basically completely changing your brain by being number one, mindful. Number two is by pratyahara, which is keeping your concentration on certain things within you, not outside you. Why not outside you? Today the sky is beautiful, the climate is good. Tomorrow it may not be. So if you keep your eyes on the cloud, tomorrow it will be black, day after tomorrow it will be yellow, one day after that there'll be rain. So these are all things which are never permanent. As Buddha said, the whole world, the material world, is impermanent, is transient. So why would you want to spend time on something that is transient? I give you a Mercedes car and I say it will vanish tomorrow. Would you like that sort of a Mercedes car? No, you'll not like it. You want to keep everything that is always there. So that explains why we have to do meditation and how science does it.
I'll just
Thank
make
you.
a one.
Yeah.
I'll just make one comment that mindfulness has to ultimately lead us to be mind emptiness. Mindfulness to mind emptiness is the real course of meditation. Being mindful is a beginning, and being free of mind is the end.
Great. Thank you very much for this perspective. Actually, as Gita says, Uddhared Atmanatmanam Natmanam Avsadayat, yoga really provides that optimistic view that we are the say masters of our destiny, and modern science is really started understanding it. I remember research by Candace Pert, the scientist who discovered opiate receptors. Opiate receptors are the cellular binding sites for neuropeptides like endorphins, and this particular research is now hinting at our enormous ability to heal ourselves, and yoga is really a way to uh, realize that potential. With this, another question for a participant: is yoga liberalization from the materialistic world, an attainment of moksha, or to deal with worldly sorrow? Please explain. Over to you, Dr. Vinod.
Yeah, being aware of the sorrowful nature of material world is what you go through when you are in leading your worldly life, but you are doing it with open eyes and with an intention to understand the underlying realities. Sorrow is coming from where? So we have to discover that within ourselves, and we have to realize those truths that have been explained by the seers and sages in our own life. And when you discover that, you realize over a period of time that the efforts that I put in, the time I spend on earning something at material level, is vastly disproportionate to what I get in return after the time is spent and the money and all the rest of the efforts that I put in. And if I realize this, then my approach to life would undergo radical transformation through my inner understanding of reality. The transient, the world is transient. It's all, shall we say, um, going to end and transient. So that I have to realize through my own observations, my own understanding. And once I do that, and at the same time, if I'm doing meditation and I'm able to establish access with my Satchidananda, my Swarupa, or truth consciousness. Sat is truth, Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is bliss. So if I'm able to access that every day, and at the same time, if I'm able to also realize the limitations of my this material world, and whatever I experience as a material reality in the form of sorrow or suffering, that is because of my limited self controlling everything. And if I realize the ramifications of my own limited self, which is governed by ego, in my own day to day living, and if I realize those minor uh, points, minor areas where that ego exists, even after years of my practice of meditation and spirituality, if that ego is found somewhere, and if I realize through my own exploration of inner world that it is responsible for my suffering, then it loses control over me, because it survives on my reaction to my ego. If I try to hold on to it, again it grows. If I avoid it, again it grows. But if I understand it, it disappears. And that's the beauty of it, that this particular time is not enough. But I'll just mention that the serpent imposition, superimposition on underlying rope, is what Shankaracharya mentions, that this ephemeral world, changing world, it's just imposition, superimposition on reality that exists underneath that, and that has to be discovered. And honestly feel that all the treatises that are available in India are scientific work. Bhagavan Patanjali, whatever he mentions in Patanjali Yoga it's highly scientific, completely rational. He's not saying anything. There are no prerequisites for doing yoga. He's not saying that, he's not mentioning do's and don'ts about yoga. He's just stating facts about his own realization of truth, and which is what scientists does. Scientists do not oversell or sell or undersell. They just state facts that they have discovered and understood. That's precisely what Patanjali is doing, and therefore we have to refer to those basic fundamental texts and treatises that are available to figure out how life is to be led fully to reach emancipation. And emancipation is not something negative. It is complete. It comes after complete fulfillment that you experience in life. It's a pinnacle of experiencing highest state of consciousness, and then you release the body. It's not running away from realities of life. In fact, having learned through your life and then discovered the limitations of worldly life, and then you're leaving it. So that's the process involved, which is, according to me, is completely scientific. So I prefer referring to those texts more and applying all the principles that they have talked about in my own inner world, and also talking with my students and trying to make them realize the facts that have been expressed by those sages and seers.
Uh,
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please.
Diriji, I don't know how much time we have, because I do see one question here about, does parallel universe exist as per Vedanta?
Yeah.
Do we have some time? Then I can. And there's one more question, I think, on understanding modern science in terms of Vedanta.
Yes.
Do we
And
have time for that, or
yes, I think we will have, say, 5 minutes more, 5 to 10 minutes, please.
so?
Yeah, please,
Yeah,
please, sir. Please comment, sir, on those
so I think
questions.
this is very interesting, because what most Indians has to know, especially the so-called scientifically trained Indians, people from different IITs, IIM, who consider a lot of Hindu philosophy coming sort of rituals. It's Hindu philosophy is something that you don't do because your father did or your grandfather did. That is called a ritual. Most of the world religion are like that, ritualistic. Hindu philosophy never tells you to do what somebody else did. Hindu philosophy tells you to understand And if you think there is a meaning to that, then do it. Even Buddha said that this is a royal path. I walked that path. If there is somebody called Shiva, he walked that path, and you also walk that path. So it is interesting to see that, in fact, there is lot of relation between Advaita Vedanta and modern science. First of all, let's take about this concept of mind. As you know, in modern physics also, none of this what you see exists. The whole universe, the quantum firmament of the universe, they are like a wave pattern. So neither an electron exists, neither a proton exists, neither an atom exists, neither you or I exist. And this is science. I'm not talking of some metaphysics or some nonsense. So what we see, this virtual universe and Maya, is a concept so tremendous that came, I don't know how, 10,000 years back, that is actually speaking today's science. And there's one more thing which is even more dangerous than that, which proves what ancient philosophy has been saying for a long time. In 1892 London lectures, Vivekananda says the whole universe is one. One part of the universe knows what the other part is doing. Obviously, coming from somebody who's just a BA in English, which is just a graduate in English, and a philosopher and a monk, people thought this guy is talking some philosophical trash. God knows. I mean, this has got no scientific validity whatsoever. You guys must know that there's a famous experiment called the EPR experiment by Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, which actually proved Einstein wrong in many ways. Because Einstein says, if what Vivekananda says is true, then what Einstein says, that the light is the fastest mode of communication in the universe, has to be wrong. Now we know it is partially wrong. Why? Because there's something called law of non-local connection, which means like electron in the sun knows what an electron in Dr. Tillu's or Dr. Vinod or what Dr. Basude's body is doing. I may not know it, you may not know it, because the whole universe is connected. So in quantum physics, this has got a new name. This is called quantum entanglement. So the whole universe is actually connected to each other. They behave like a one single body. You do not have to use an external media like light or sound to communicate between each other. Like I'm talking to you by sound because I'm talking, you're hearing. And I don't mind saying it here with all prayers to my guru. There was a time when I never talked. I just thought something he used to tell. Not that I had any special powers. I am still as dumb as I was before. But he had that special powers. When I had thoughts, he could pick it up because the whole universe is one. My skull is not different from your skull. It is all one. So this concept of having multiple worlds is actually there also. We also believe that there are different crores, and in each of the universe, there are multiple universes, and there are multiple dimensions in each of these universes. And your existence depends on how fine your vibration is. If your vibration is according to the materialistic world that we have on earth, you are born on earth. And that's what moksha is all about. Moksha doesn't mean that you stop burning on earth. People with moksha take birth all the time if they want to. That's how Ramakrishna came. That's how Buddha came. That's how maybe so many other people are still there, sitting in the Himalayas we don't even know, who are trying to improve the earth. So the concept that moksha means you're finished, you don't enjoy the earth, no. You enjoy everything 100% actually when you get moksha. Whether you want to enjoy the earth, whether you enjoy bliss, whether you enjoy ultimate consciousness, you have the choice. Now you don't have the choice. You're just a physical instrument like a car, which is being driven by the owner, and the owner is the interventional is the consciousness or God or nature, whatever way you want to call it. So the question is, do you still want to remain a car, or you want to be the driver and the car itself so that you can drive? So that is what. So yes, there is a very close. It's too small a time to understand, and that's why some of the topmost nuclear physicists, cosmologists in the world, they are actually believer in Advaita Vedanta rather than the actual religion they come from. I don't want to bring religion out here because this has nothing to do with religion, but Vedanta goes very closely with some of the world's topmost cosmologists because what they're physically seeing in the universe now goes hands in hands with what the sadhus or sages said 10,000 years back. That's why I said when Werner Heisenberger said that what we are inventing today are not inventions, they're just discoveries, for they have been invented by Hindu rishis long ago. This is a man who is the father of quantum physics. So this is his statement. This is not even my statement. Because you might say, oh, I am biased, I am an Indian, so I'm biased with Hindu philosophy. This is by a guy who's not Indian, has never been to India, but was so much enthralled by Hindu philosophy and what he was doing research on, that is quantum physics, he was forced to say this. I hope it answers that question, that how
Yeah.
parallel universes and other concepts are akin with some of the Hindu thoughts.
There are very many questions and a few comments. For example, how we can justify therapeutic yoga if yama and niyam come before asana and pranayam. Uh, in the event of practicing asana and pranayam, it will be difficult because of absence of yama and niyama. So, any quick comment on this?
No, that's not true, actually. There's a misunderstanding of the whole thing. Nobody is saying that you have total control of yama and niyama and then go to the next step. In Hinduism, see, that is the biggest problem we have. Unlike certain religions, we have nothing specified that you have to look to the west or east and do this or do that. You start all together. Everything will happen by itself. It's like a chemical reaction. It's not that you finish yama, then you only have to jump to niyama, and if you have not done this too, you can't go to pranayama. No, all these things will happen simultaneously. Your thought process should be to attend them. Whether you have attended, nobody has attended any of them first and then gone to the next step, then it will never ever happen. So this concept itself is wrong, that 8 step doesn't mean they come in order, that you one, then comes 2, then comes 3, and then comes number 8. It's not like that.
And that's why Patanjali calls it as Ashtanga Yoga. They are not steps, but they are like parts of the body of yoga. So all parts of the body are equally important. Maybe for understanding's sake, you might be spending some time understanding yamas and then you turn to understand yamas and then asana pranayam. So for understanding's sake, you may spend time with each aspect of it. But eventually, you will realize that all those 8 limbs are a part of the body of yoga and they are equally important. And even one step further, when you really dive deep into those sutras, you'll realize that each and every sutra uh, is talking directly, indirectly, or remotely about Kaivalya. Because Kaivalya is the underlying direction that Bhagavan Patanjali is talking about. And Kaivalya, as I said earlier, is living effortlessly and easily without any pressure. Pure consciousness. Our pure consciousness implies we are one with our pure consciousness, or we have realized that we are pure consciousness. And all the contaminations are because of thoughts and emotions and everything that is put in from the outside world, and the evaluation that I make, and all the rest of analysis and everything that makes it contaminated. But when I realize the facts of life, and when I go through the integrated understanding of yoga and practices, and I practice it properly for a period of time, then I begin to realize these interconnections between all the limbs. And then living up to the philosophy of yoga becomes possible. And that's very important. And instead of control, control may breed need to control again and again and again. But if we spend time with understanding the concepts well, then we don't need to control. Control happens.
Thank you, sir, for this comment. And before we close, I request the speakers to share a quick comment on this session.
Yeah, I was very happy. I was very happy to listen to Basuji because he's really knowledgeable about so many things, recent researches, and he was so eloquent in putting everything together and making sense out of it, which I really loved to listen. Thank you, Basuji.
It's my privilege. It's my privilege to have you and get from darshan from you too. Thank you very much. I really appreciate for having you. It's a great learning for us to have both you and Dr. Tillu in this session.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, there are many questions, but there will be a series of such webinars as well to take care of lot many questions, and we have recorded all the questions. We will address them eventually in the series of webinar, because The Ramkumar Rati Patanjali Yoga Chair and American Association of Yoga and Meditation will continue such kind of dialogues, and we are also going to have series of webinars in June. We will get back to you with more information. This is the time to practice yoga, to go to the roots with our inquisitive tools and techniques of modern science. There's such a very balanced view of modern tools and techniques, and ancient insights will be really helpful for uh, health, happiness, and healing in this pandemic. Let us pray that सर्वेपि सुखिनः सन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्. Let us pray for health and happiness of the entire world. Now I request to propose a vote of thanks to Anindra Datta. Anindra is a social science student from Kolkata. Over to you, Anindraji.
Thank you, Dr. Girish Tillu, for moderating the session. I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Basure and Dr. Vinod, for their commitment to make this session so informative and effective. We hope to see you again. As for our viewers, please be on standby. We are going to start our free sessions of yoga from the month of March 15th onwards. Please give your registrations on our email, that is contact us @aymonline.org, or WhatsApp your registrations to us on our WhatsApp number. Thank you so much for joining us today.